Hey there, TikTakers! In today's video, we will tell you about some of the strangest and craziest real punishments that have been applied in prisons and in some courts. Let's start. In 2020, two Oklahoma prison workers and a supervisor faced multiple charges of criminal cruelty while performing their duties. And what had been the infringement? Well, forcing several prisoners to listen to the nursery rhyme Baby Shark on a loop and at high volume for long periods of time. To do this, they forced the condemned to remain standing, facing a wall and handcuffed with their arms behind their backs while the song played non-stop. This way, they couldn't cover their ears. Two of the inmates were subjected to this punishment after their sleep was interrupted. They woke them up at dawn and left them standing with loud music. These events caused emotional stress in the prisoners. The workers who carried out these cruel practices claimed that it was just a joke and resigned from their jobs. For his part, the supervisor, accused of knowing about those events and not preventing them, chose to retire. And Baby Shark has not been the only animation starring in prisons. A Missouri poacher and his sons were convicted in 2018 of illegally hunting hundreds of deer over 3 years. The men grabbed their heads, which was the only thing he wanted as a trophy, and left their bodies lying around, rotting. The judge who handled the case sentenced him to 1 year in prison, and as part of the sentence, forced him to watch the Disney classic Bambi at least once a month during this time he was in prison. His intention was to raise awareness in the man so that he wouldn't repeat the crime. The pain of forcing the hunter to watch the fawn's story several times wasn't something without thought. Because in the year the animation was published, a great controversy was generated among the Hunters Union, who saw it as an ideological threat due to the death of the fawn's mother at the hands of a poacher. The truth is that Bambi, years later, continues to give lessons. The next punishment was in itself a prison, the famous Tent City. In 1993, Sheriff Joe Arpaio opened a temporary open-air jail in Phoenix as an anti-crime measure. Because according to him, there were too many convicts and there wasn't room for so many. Tent City was made up of 82 military tents that housed 1,700 prisoners. The tents, which were similar to those used by the army, were used to sentence that criminals should not have better conditions than soldiers. Prisoners with minor crimes went there. They slept in bunk beds that were placed inside the tents, which were on top of the gravel. In the summer, with Arizona's dry climate, temperatures inside could reach 129 degrees Fahrenheit. There was only one air-conditioned unit, where prisoners could shower and freshen up, but to sleep they had to return to their tent. Although the heat was not the only enemy. On very cold days, temperatures dropped to 41 degrees. The holes in the tents let in both the cold and rain, soaking them while they slept. As raincoats, they were given garbage bags. In addition, they were forced to wear pink underwear and sandals, and the wet towels they were offered to put on their necks to relieve the heat were also the same color. According to the sheriff, he chose the color pink so that the inmates wouldn't want to steal anything from each other. The next crazy punishment was not in jail, but almost. A woman in Cleveland routinely passed a school bus on the sidewalk. To save a few minutes on your journey and thus not waste time while the bus picked up the children. She repeated the same action day after day, until a driver, tired of seeing that infraction, recorded the event with his cell phone and sent it to the police. What was his punishment? In addition to taking away his driving license for a time and a fine of $250, the judge forced her to carry a sign on her car for a month with the following text: "Only an idiot would drive on the sidewalk to avoid a school bus." A judge well known for his extravagant rulings is Michael Cicconetti. This judge, now retired, used to punish people who had no criminal record with punishments that had some similarity to their crime, in a creative and striking way. This was the case of a person accused of insulting some police officers. He called them pigs after he committed a traffic violation. The judge decided that this crime was not serious enough to send him to jail, but forced him to stand on a busy street corner with a 170-kilo pig next to him, and a sign that said, This is not a police officer. In the event that the crime had involved animals, the judge punished them seriously, because he's a great defender of them. This is what he did in the case of a woman who abandoned 35 baby cats in the forest. Due to the low temperatures, the little kittens died, which angered the judge. Then he gave the woman the choice between spending 90 days in prison or spending a night completely alone and with nothing in the same forest. 14 days of house arrest and a series of donations to animal shelters. His harsh words to the accused were, "Would you like them to abandon you in a forest? Would you like to hear raccoons and coyotes in the dead of night? Feeling cold, hungry, and not knowing when you will be rescued? That's what you have done to the kittens, and now you'll know what it feels like." And not all crazy sentences end in prison. There are some sentences from judges who offer the most striking alternatives. A rap fan was sentenced to a fine for constantly playing rap music too loudly in his car, disturbing people. The judge who handled the case offered him a reduction in the fine if he spent 20 hours listening to other classical music authors, such as Bach, Beethoven, or Chopin. However, the young man only lasted 15 minutes listening to classical music, argued that he didn't have time for that, and decided to pay the fine. The judge's goal was not to change his musical taste, as many of you may be thinking. But what she sought was to force the young man to listen to something he didn't like for a long time. Just as it happened to people who didn't want to listen to his music when he played it constantly and at such volume. One of the most famous judges in Spain is Emilio Calatayud, known as the judge of exemplary sentences. One of the most controversial was the one imposed in 2017 on a minor who had robbed a hair salon. The young man entered the establishment with the intention of taking everything he could. He forced open the exterior blind and broke the glass in the door. Once inside, he took 600 euros in cash that the owner kept in a can, and a hairdryer valued at more than 150 euros. His sentence was to complete the styling course in 9 months and pass an exam. But this exam wouldn't be with a professional in the field, but with the judge himself, who would have to cut his hair satisfactorily. If after that time he didn't do it well, he would accuse him of disobedience. The magistrate himself told him, "I won't cut my hair until June, which is when the course ends, so you will have to demonstrate your skills." The same judge has also been the protagonist of other extravagant sentences, such as the conviction of a 17-year-old boy for driving a motorcycle without insurance. After learning of his great drawing skills, he was sentenced to invest 50 hours of work in telling, through a comic he made, the story of his crime and how he had ended up receiving his sentence. The comic was quickly delivered to the judge, showing how the fine had arrived at his house, his parents' reaction, the trial, and its conclusions. The judge considered that if the young man reflected on what he had done wrong, doing what he liked most, which was drawing, he would learn the lesson better, and not with a fine that his parents would pay and he wouldn't care. Among his other ingenious sentences is that of condemning a hacker to give 100 hours of computer classes to other young people. His cybercrime had been committed when the young man was 17 years old, and from his home computer he managed to enter the hard drive of several companies and cause damage valued at 2,000 euros. The judge decided that his skill with computers should be exploited for good, not evil, so he released him on the condition that he teach other guys. The Spanish judge also made a minor spend 100 hours patrolling with a local police officer for driving recklessly without a license. And another defendant was ordered to work with the firefighters for a few days, after having burned several trash cans. In the case of a minor who was tried for drunk driving, he was forced to spend several hours in the paraplegia unit with patients and their families, and even to attend the surgery of a person who had been in a terrible traffic accident. Some ingenious lessons not only on what is legal and what is not, but also some valuable life lessons for these minors. As for punishments for drunkenness, it isn't something that only happens today. In the past, sanctions were imposed on people who had drunk too much. Specifically in England, in the middle of the 15th century, anyone who showed signs of drunkenness in public began to be persecuted. This is how the drunkard's cloak was born, a police punishment in which the authorities placed the person who had drunk too much inside a wooden barrel, in which they had previously made a hole in the top and bottom to the head and legs and 2 other holes for the arms. The accused was forced to walk down the street with a barrel, subjecting him to a punishment of shame and public ridicule so as not to do it again. The drunkard's cloak gained fame, and it was common to come across the peculiar barrel mane, and this practice was also carried out in some places in the United States. And if we focus on the craziest demands, we also have a long repertoire. People who have filed the most absurd lawsuits, and for some it hasn't turned out badly at all. One of the most incredible was the one filed against the famous energy drink company, Red Bull. Surely everyone will be familiar with their campaign. Red Bull gives you wings. That slogan arrived in the 90s and caused sales to rise. Later, advertisements appear on TV, where through simple drawings, the energy that drinking it gave the consumer was exemplified with drawn wings. Well, although many of us understand that it is nothing more than a metaphor, a class action lawsuit managed to get the company to pay compensation for misleading advertising, because they had drunk Red Bull and they continued without wings. Another lawsuit that has left us speechless is that of Jennifer Connell. The woman went to the party of her nephew, who had just turned 8 years old. When the boy saw her arrive, he got very excited and threw himself into her arms. But he did so with so much energy that they both fell to the ground and the woman ended up with her wrist broken. Up to this point, we have a sad incident that could remain an anecdote. But if we're telling it to you, of course, the story couldn't end there. The woman filed a $127,000 lawsuit against her 8-year-old nephew, accusing him of negligent and careless for not having measured his strength. After her dramatic statement to the jury, it took them about 20 minutes to deliberate, although most likely because they couldn't believe what they were hearing.
Huh?
As you can guess, Aunt Jen came home empty-handed and accused the insurance agency of forcing her to sue the boy. Surely, many times, reading the instructions for use of a new appliance or electronic device, you have been surprised by the warnings. Or maybe you're one of those who only consult them when something in the product fails. Like discovering that your watch wasn't waterproof after you went into the water on the beach with it. If you're one of these, you will be interested in this lawsuit that went viral on the internet. Although logic tells us not to put our pet in any appliance, for a woman in the United States, the idea of drying her cat in the microwave was the fastest and most effective way to warm it. We're sorry to spoil the ending, the cat died. After the incident, the woman sued the brand because it hadn't warned her anywhere in the instruction manual about the danger of putting a cat in a microwave. Does it seem absurd to you? The woman won the lawsuit, and since then, the brand in question and many others include in the instructions that it shouldn't be used to dry animals or babies. And another viral lawsuit has been that of Terrence Dixon, a man who decided to break into a house in Bristol. When he was about to leave the house through the garage, he got locked in, and it remained there, a total of 8 days until the owners returned home from their vacation. The man survived on Pepsi and a bag of dog food. Here you are, surely assuming that the family reported the thief for entering their house. Well, no. What they found was a lawsuit from the thief himself for moral damages for not having been able to get out of there. The resolution? The jury ordered the owners to pay compensation to the thief. And to finish this list of crazy demands, we ask you a question. Can you sue yourself? Okay, you're probably wondering what the point of doing that would be. To do this, you must know the story of Barbara Bagley, a woman from Utah who sued herself for the wrongful death of her husband. The accident occurred in 2011. The woman was driving her Range Rover in Nevada when she had a traffic accident, and her husband, who was the co-pilot, was thrown from the vehicle and died from his injuries. To avoid paying with the money she had inherited after her husband's death, Barbara had an idea. What if she sued herself? This way, the insurance company should make the payments, she thought. And besides this, if she won the trial, she would recover her money and that of her own negligence. The lawyers are still trying to get out of the mess. Do you know more punishments or crazy demands? We would love to know which one surprised you the most. Leave us a comment commenting on it, or your suggestions for a new video. We love reading you. And with your comment, you help our channel to continue growing. See you in the next video. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it. And if you want to see more Draw My Life videos, subscribe to our channel. See you in the next episode.